Okay, thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. Megan and I are delighted to be here today to talk to you about iNaturalist, which we affectionately call the expert in our back pocket. So we thought we would just start by quickly introducing ourselves. So I'll let Megan go first.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having us on here today. My name is Megan Quinn and I'm the Coordinator of Conservation Biology for Eastern Ontario, with my main focus being on the properties that the Nature Conservancy of Canada has in the Frontenac Arch and the Ottawa Valley. So in my job, I wear many hats, including this delightful NCC branded winter hat that I've got on here. But mainly my job involves dealing with all of the stewardship work, so all of the on-the-ground, great outdoor activities that we get to do on our properties.
And I am Ali Giroux, and I am also a coordinator of conservation biology with the Nature Conservancy of Canada, but with Central Ontario East. And so I help to manage the portfolio of properties in Central Ontario East. And
Excuse me, Ali, I'm sorry. You're not coming through properly.
Like your video, we can't hear you very well, Ali.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you're sitting there, it's great.
Okay, I'll try to sit a bit closer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm involved in the stewardship work of properties in Central Ontario East. And I started as an intern with the Nature Conservancy of Canada in 2009, after graduating with a master's in wildlife science from the University of Queensland. And I was formerly with Eastern Ontario for 6.5 years, and then passed the torch to Megan to work in Central Ontario East starting in 2018. So just to confirm, you guys can hear me okay now?
Yep.
Okay. So we just wanted to very quickly talk to you about the Nature Conservancy of Canada in case some of you aren't completely familiar with who we are and what we do. So the Nature Conservancy of Canada is the largest land conservation organization in Canada, and we are a charity that partners with individuals, corporations, foundations, Indigenous communities, and governments at all levels to protect Canada's most important natural areas. And we do this through securement and also through the long-term stewardship of our properties. So we essentially commit to caring for these lands forever. So we do different things on our properties like manage invasive plants, we restore landscapes, we build trails for public access, and we teach visitors about the importance of maintaining these natural spaces. So this map shows NCC project sites throughout Canada. And as you can see, we work from coast to coast to coast with programs in every province. And since 1962, NCC and our partners have helped to protect 14 million hectares of land and water. So to put that into perspective, that is about 4 times the size of Vancouver Island, or 25 times the size of Prince Edward Island. And we've helped to conserve the habitat of 223 species at risk. So because of Ontario's size, the Ontario region is split into 6 sub-regions to allow for more effective program implementation. And through our conservation planning work, we've identified 18 priority areas where we focus our work. And these are places that face the biggest threats, contain the largest number of species at risk, and are some of the best examples of the natural diversity Ontario has to offer. So we work in these areas because these areas are critical for conserving the biodiversity of the province. And as you can see, we work from the north shore of Lake Superior to Pelee Island in Lake Erie.
So I will briefly just touch on Eastern Ontario. So this boundary here is my kingdom, as you could say. But because this is such a large area of land, we really have to focus where we work, and that's where our natural areas come in. So as I mentioned, I manage the Frontenac Arch and the Ottawa Valley. So these two areas we've identified as big hotspots for biodiversity and where we focus all of our efforts. And just a quick note that this map is a little bit out of date because we just recently approved our new management plan for the Ottawa Valley, which encompasses a lot more area. We have dipped down into Smiths Falls and kind of moved the whole boundary all the way to the border with the United States, which will really allow us to conserve more places and really help build a great natural wildlife corridor that we have.
And this map shows the area that I work in Central Ontario East. And this area lies basically between the Canadian Shield and Lake Ontario and spans essentially from the GTA and Lake Simcoe in the west to the greater Kingston area in the east. And the areas in sort of light green are the natural areas that I help to work in, and that includes the Rice Lake Plains, Eastern Lake Ontario coast, and Napanee Plain. And again, this is a bit out of date as well because we're working on the Rice Lake Plains natural area conservation plan, and it has expanded to meet up actually with the Napanee and Eastern Lake Ontario coast, so it's expanded quite significantly. So to sum up our years of work, we conserve places that aren't only ecologically significant, but are also incredibly beautiful. And we're doing this in your own backyard. So with partners, we've helped to protect 84,000 hectares in Ontario. And that number continues to grow, and that is with a big thanks to our incredible donors and partners. So I very quickly wanted to put this map up of Dog and Cranberry Lake to show sort of where you guys lie in context of our sub-regional boundaries and natural area boundaries. So this area up in the upper left-hand corner is our Milburn Creek property, which is in the town of Battersea. And this squiggly green line is our sub-regional boundary. And so actually the south end of Dog Lake is in our Central Ontario East sub-region and in our Eastern Lake Ontario coast natural area. And then the area, so North Dog Lake and Cranberry Lake are in our Eastern Ontario subregion and in the Frontenac Arch natural area, which I know can be quite confusing and has often led to some confusion on who you should contact. So if you're thinking about Milburn Creek, contact me. Anything else, you can contact Megan.
It just means you get the pleasure of working with both of us instead.
That's right, yeah.
So the area that I work in that you might be perhaps the most familiar with are our Loughborough Wilderness Block group of properties. The one that most people seem to know is the Elbow Lake property up there, but that's actually part of a much larger block of land that we have. It's actually 3,500 acres and growing. There's 16 properties that fall around Loughborough Lake, and really hammers home the point we're trying to make about how the Frontenac Arch and Eastern Ontario and moving into Eastern Lake Ontario coast is all about building the connections. So our goal is to just kind of put all these pieces of the puzzle together to create this big continuous band of habitat that's vital for not only species success, but migration and all the fantastic things that we all know why we love this area so much. So just wanted to throw that map up there as well.
It will also show you different areas that you can go and use iNaturalist on. So on to our back pocket expert, or as I like to call it also, my new best friend. So although we still have those dog-eared, very muddy field guides, we also have this very handy new tool called iNaturalist.ca. and it can help you learn about nature and the species that you see in your own backyard. So iNaturalist is an online community of over 1 million scientists and naturalists that can be used on your computer or smartphone to get to know what's living around you. What's more is that by recording and sharing your observations, you create research quality data for scientists working to better understand and protect nature. It is a citizen science platform that is being used worldwide to identify, track, and compile information on species. So iNaturalist is a joint initiative by the California Academy of Sciences and the National Geographic Society. And it began in 2008 actually as a master's student project at Berkeley's School of Information. And then in about 2015, Canadian Wildlife Federation and the Royal Ontario Museum partnered with iNaturalist.org to create iNaturalist.ca. And so, as you can see here, iNaturalist.ca is just one of many throughout the world that is part of this iNaturalist global network. And that is essentially just a connection of globally connected communities through iNaturalist.
So I absolutely love using this slide, and I use it for every iNaturalist presentation that I do because it really shows how much the platform is growing. So what I've done here is just taken 2 screenshots of the homepage that you get when you go to iNaturalist.ca. And the one on the top with the gray dots, I took back in July 2019. That was the first time I did an iNaturalist presentation. And there were just over 25 million different individual observations that have been made. And then if you look at the bottom, sort of the orange-red dots, that I took yesterday, and we are now over 55 million. So it is a growing platform. You can see the number of species, the number of identifiers, and the number of people using the platform have basically more than doubled in a lot of cases. So it's actively growing and this huge source of information. So if you're a bit of a data nerd like me, it's pretty cool to look at. And so we don't have time to teach you how to use the whole app in just half an hour, but one great thing that iNaturalist does have is these great little series of videos that walks you through how to do everything. So we just wanted to show you really quick and easy the how to make an observation one. It's just a minute long, and we'll give you kind of a nice brief burst of what the main focus of the iNaturalist app is.
Okay, so you've installed the iNaturalist app and created an account. Time to get outside and record your first observation. Here's how to do it. Any living thing, like a plant, animal, or fungus, can be an observation on iNaturalist. Once you find something you'd like to record, just tap Observe and take a photo. You can review your picture, then hit Next if it looks good. To identify it, hit What did you see? If you have an internet connection, iNaturalist will suggest 10 visually similar species and often a common ancestor. You can choose one of those or search for a species name. On this observation details screen, you can add more photos of the same organism or write a note. The date, time, and location have been automatically added. You can also change the geoprivacy of the observation, mark whether it's captive or cultivated, or add it to a project. Once you're finished, just hit Share, and your observation will be uploaded for everyone to see and identify. That's it. Keep on exploring and sharing.
So that was really quick, and we don't expect that to have taught you how to use it, but just to show that it really is just 3 simple steps. You go and find something, you take a picture of it, and you upload it, and from there, anything else you do is just extra. But those are the 3 bare minimum steps, and sometimes people are a little bit worried if they're not quite used to technology, but I can safely say that my mother, who I had to write step-by-step instructions on how to turn on the computer that we have at home, has successfully learned how to use iNaturalist. So it really is an easy, user-friendly platform. So what the Nature Conservancy of Canada has been doing is we want to see how we can engage our local communities using iNaturalist. So we have basically a project that we've created on iNaturalist that shows you some of our Nature Conservancy of Canada properties. So we've recently added some of our properties in some of our natural areas, and as you can see, quite spread out all over Ontario. We're just doing this as a pilot project, so you won't find all of the properties on there yet, but as this successfully grows, that's where we're trying to aim towards. And the benefit of this is it lets you see where our property boundaries are. So one question sometimes people have when they're on our properties is where they are on the property and where the property actually goes. And then you can see some of the species that have been found on the property, engage with other users of the property. And so through this pilot project that we've been doing, so far we've had over 11,000 observations, over 2,500 species, and engaged almost 500 people into kind of the work that we're doing at the Nature Conservancy of Canada. And we know people love to get outside and love to walk and hike on our properties, and this is just a great way for them to be able to contribute to the great work that we're doing. And it's also fun.
And so there's also a leaderboard as well that we can see on our iNaturalist project pages. And so it's a fun way to also appeal to your competitive side. And look, we've got Milburn Creek in here, so go Milburn Creek, go! Let's get some more observations. And I just wanted to quickly show you an example of what a project page might look like. And this is our Milburn Creek property. And what I like about it is that, as Megan said, it shows you the boundary of the property, but also talks a little bit about the property itself and where you can find more information. And it gives this really nice overview of the number of observations that have been observed, how many species, how many observers, some really nice pictures that people have taken. Also gives you sort of who's done the most observations. And it also kind of spits out these really neat stats as well on like the different types of species that have been recorded. So for example, for Milburn Creek, I know that 36% of the species observed are plants, or 79 species of plants have been observed on the property, which is pretty neat. What's also nice is that, so this is also on the Milburn Creek iNaturalist project page. And so this is the boundary of the property, but it also shows me exactly where those species have been observed. And that is incredibly important for me when I'm thinking about, you know, what actions I'm going to do on the property and writing the property management plan to kind of know what different habitats are important for different kinds of species. And these sort of platforms are amazing in terms of just engaging volunteers. I know a number of my colleagues have gotten even property stewards through iNaturalist. And what's nice is iNaturalist really does kind of like create that community. And what's cool about it is you can like follow different observers, and you can even message people like directly through your computer or your app, which is really incredible. I really feel that like with iNaturalist, there's so many opportunities for us. And I know there's been opportunities to do bio blitzes and like targeted species searches and stuff like that. So really the opportunities are endless. And it like I don't know how to drill it home how important this data is to us too, because I'm telling you right now that we use this data a lot in our own management planning, but even like on a landscape scale plan, we are looking at iNaturalist.
Yeah, I mean, the maps that we showed you at the beginning show just how big the areas that we work in are, and Ali and I are just two people, so we can't be out on every single property every single day at the exact time that you might be seeing a species, so it's super valuable. But one of the big questions that I get from people that seems to be a holdup of why they're a bit nervous to use iNaturalist is that they aren't super comfortable with identifying species. And what I tell them is that's absolutely fine, because that's what iNaturalist does really great at. So just for an example, this is a picture of a plant that I took outside of my office, actually. And I know what it is, but if I didn't, take a picture of it in iNaturalist, and then I can click the very handy button to give me suggestions, which Ali is going to do right now. And what it does is it pops up and says, this is what we think it might be. And this is correct. This is a lesser periwinkle, which is actually an invasive species. So super important for us to know about and get on top of early. So fantastic tool if you want to just take a look around your garden and see if you have any species that might be a problem, or any species that might be rare, or just to know what species might be. So it's a cool feature. The photo recognition has come a really, really long way, and I'm always surprised by even sort of the obscure pictures I'm able to put in, that it actually pops out the answer. So I thought I'd be really sneaky and try and trick it. So this is a picture of me looking very wet and probably slightly miserable when I was doing one of my field days. So just for fun, I thought I'd test how good the photo recognition software actually is. So I tried putting this in iNaturalist, and it actually got it. It says that I'm a human, so we can trust it works fairly well. Although I'm a little concerned that it also thinks I could be a grey rat snake, a milk snake, or a cucumber tree. So I think it's probably reading what's happening in the background, but I did think that was quite fun to share. And then another question that comes up is kind of, how do you know the data is accurate? You've got it coming from lots of sources, some people that know what the species are, some people that have used the photo recognition software. And iNaturalist has a really great system for that, in that when you upload a piece of data, you upload your photo, you can also upload something saying, I have no idea what this is. There's a great community of scientists who basically just spend most of their day on iNaturalist looking for things that they can observe, and I'm guilty of doing this on the weekends too. And they will confirm your identification. And when enough people have confirmed that, yes, this is the species you say it is, then you get a little check mark and it becomes a research grade observation. There's also a space for people to chat about the observation a little bit. So for an example, this is an observation that came up as a rat snake, but there's someone that says, hey, actually, I think this might be a milk snake. And then somebody else, who actually happens to be one of our colleagues, has commented that, yes, this is a rat snake and this is why. So it's a great learning tool if you post something that you aren't quite sure of. There's always people willing to jump in and say what they think it is. But you don't have to worry about your observation, being misidentified and then sort of contributing the wrong data to research, because things have to get verified before they're actually confirmed on iNaturalist. And that's definitely not a reason to put things up. I put things up on iNaturalist that I have no idea what they are all the time. And then just a couple of quick terms that you come across while using the iNaturalist app. So the observation is the thing, so that really cool snake that you saw. And then the place is the area that's defined on the map. So when you use the app, it will automatically come up with your location of where you found something. Or you can kind of have like a user added place. So that is the case where we have added our boundaries on. So, it becomes an observation that's in the Nature Conservancy of Canada's boundary. But just because something doesn't fit into one of those boundaries, you can record something in your garden, even though that's not a boundary that's been put on iNaturalist. And then when we talk about giving out coordinates of things, something that comes up is data sensitivity. So we have some species that we don't want people to necessarily know exactly where they are. And iNaturalist has a system for this. So there are different ways that an observation can be recorded. So you can have an observation with an open privacy, which means that anyone can see where it is. And for a common species, that's okay. If somebody knows where you saw a robin or where you saw a raccoon, that's good data to collect. You can also have a species where the information is obscured. So we have sensitive species that, it's good to know where in the general area they are, but for reasons such as poaching or the fact that they're very sensitive and you don't want people disturbing them, we have those as being obscured. So what that means is that it will make a random point within a 30-kilometer grid of where you are and show that observation in that area. So then when that gets queried and the data gets pulled, we just know it's kind of in the area. And then for some that are really sensitive, you can set them as private. So some species automatically get flagged as being private. So kind of iNaturalist and the people that need to know in terms of data know where the species is, but people aren't going to be able to go and see where your super rare turtle or super rare orchid is. So it's something that they've built into the system to make sure that even though we're encouraging people to go and try and see these species, that we aren't inadvertently causing them harm by telling everybody where they are. So yeah, so things like species at risk, things that are listed as kind of, being endangered or threatened, those automatically get flagged by iNaturalist. So there's no worry about sharing data information that way.
And I'll just add quickly to that, any species at risk, so what we call SAR, the Natural Heritage Information Center, which is NHIC, so they work with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, or sort of like a subsection of them. And any SAR automatically goes to their project as well, which is really neat because then it helps to maintain their database as well.
So it seems like a lot of you have gotten started by downloading the app, which is fantastic. You can also use iNaturalist by the website. It does mean you have to manually enter a lot of data in, but if that's what you prefer, it works just as well. It's available as an app both for Android and Apple. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there is this fantastic help section. So if you need to get started in iNaturalist and you're not entirely sure how it works and you've opened the app and you're still a little confused, there's a great help link that they have, and we can pass around the link to that as well at the end so people have it, that will answer every single question you could ever have about using iNaturalist, downloading it, setting up a profile, making your observations, and connecting with people. So it's super user-friendly. And then we thought we'd just hammer home a little bit, why is this important in the grand scheme of things? It's super fun to go and know what things are, and it's one of my favorite things about my job is that, I get to go learn what the names of things are, but it goes beyond me and it goes beyond the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Community science is the new way that we are moving towards solving these complex landscape ecological problems. We can't be everywhere at once, we can't do everything at once, but if we can engage people and make them care about these systems that they live and work in, we can truly make a huge impact. And we aren't the only people noticing this. So by collecting this kind of large scale natural history information, we're building this big database that's available to everybody that needs it. It's no longer these silos of everybody collecting their own information and duplicating efforts. And as I said, we aren't the only people that have turned this way. The organizations that you can see at the bottom, so NatureServe, Canadian Wildlife Federation, Ontario Parks, Parks Canada, the Royal Ontario Museum. These are all organizations that actively use iNaturalist. So you're contributing to something a lot bigger than yourself when you start using this. And then really, I just want to kind of hammer home that iNaturalist really is for everybody. It's not just for people who are conservationists. It's great for kids, it's great for teenagers. You don't have to be super tech savvy to use it. It doesn't take up a lot of time. You might just be someone who likes to hike the Milburn Creek property and you've come across a plant while you're on the trail and you aren't quite sure what it is and you want to find out. That's a great reason to use iNaturalist. You might really want to know more about the birds that visit your garden. So you can take a picture of a bird at one of your bird feeders or take a video or audio recording of their sound and post that and find out what it is. You might be feeling a little lost right now because we aren't really allowed to travel and you were really looking forward to going home and seeing your family at Christmas, or going to a favorite vacation spot. There's a fantastic function on iNaturalist where you can actually search around and see what species are being identified at your childhood home or cottage, or it's a great way to just really feel connected to these places in perhaps a different way than you haven't been able to do before. And yeah, so it's really cool. We think it's really fun. We use it a lot. We're happy to help if anyone has any questions about it. I think that's kind of it. I mean, just to sort of sum it up, I think it's really cool. We use it, and thank you, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Morley.
How does iNaturalist fit with eBird, Project Feeder Watch, etc.?
You want me to take this one, Nellie?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so there are separate systems. So the way we kind of like to think about it is iNaturalist is the eBird for everything. And we do pull from multiple sources. And if you are a birder and birds are really your thing, eBird is fantastic. It has a lot more functions in terms of what you can record that is kind of specifically bird related. And a lot of times when we're pulling for projects, we will pull things from eBird and from iNaturalist. So a lot of times we get people putting birds in eBird and then everything else in iNaturalist, and that's absolutely fine. You can also put birds in iNaturalist, but eBird is specifically set up for birds. iNaturalist is nice in the sense that what I think people were finding is that they were setting up all these different things. There was a frog watch and there was an eye butterfly and all of these different kind of siloed projects, whereas iNaturalist was really about trying to bring everything together into one place. So this definitely doesn't replace eBird and a lot of the functions that it has, but for everything else that's not a bird, it's pretty great.
Yeah, and I think too, like eBird is really great, specifically if you want to keep like species lists and that sort of thing too. And I think that was sort of kind of the like impetus of eBird. And iNaturalist more has the function of like being able to help you identify a species, say, that you might not necessarily know.
Yeah.
So there's certainly space for both, I feel, for sure.
And it used to be quite difficult. I mean, I am not a nature photographer by any stretch of the imagination. So I would try and get a picture of something quite flighty like a bird, and it would just be this sort of brown blob that nobody could ever identify in a million years. But they've recently allowed you to upload audio and video, I believe, as well. So a new way for kind of things like birds to be able to explore a little bit more on iNaturalist. Because that is one thing, you do need a picture or some kind of way to be able to verify what it is that you've seen. So just keep that in mind, but the fact that it is an app-based program allows you to sort of take the picture within the app, which is an easy way of doing it.
Interesting.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Carol.
Well, actually, what first is a comment is I often, because I have really crappy cell phone data, so I'll take a picture and I'll upload it later, and then I'm always trying to find how to figure out where to put it on the map. But you can do that. So I have tons of photos I've taken since living here over the last 6 years. Is it useful to post old pictures, especially things I haven't seen in a while, like a skink or whatever you call those things?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. Yeah.
There is a function where you can, so all of the things like your location and your date and sort of all of those things do get fabricated in, but you can change them. So if you know you saw something on the 3rd of June 2018, you can plug that in there. And historical data is just as important as current data, because that's where we start to see the trends and we start to see what's happening. And if we haven't seen a species in a while, maybe that's a trigger that we need to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And also, sorry, go ahead.
So just you can finish, and then I have an additional question to that.
I was just going to say that I deal with that all the time, and that practically at my house and everywhere in my office has zero cell reception. So most of my iNaturalist observations I make in the field, and you don't need to technically have any service to be able to pull the location. So it will still pull where you were when you saw it. And then I upload everything at the end of the day when I get back to Wi-Fi. So you can do it without using any data at all.
Huh.
And what's neat too is,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say what's neat too is, like, I think this was you, Carol, too, when we were talking about iNaturalist, and like you didn't even know that there was a Milburn Creek property, but iNaturalist automatically puts your observation into that project. So you
Yeah, I
could
saw
see,
my.
yeah, you were
saw
you were the second top observer.
So my second question then is it useful to post it, like if you've seen it day after day, or is it more relevant, like if you see it, I don't know, let's say I saw a frog hopping across the road in November, I thought that was odd. Like, is it, how often is it useful to post the photo, I guess?
Much as you can. I mean, in things like community science, that's where it really shines, and the sort of the more data, the better. If it's not too tedious for you to post it every single time you see it, I know people that just post every single chickadee that they see, or every single sort of species of grass. I know someone that's really excited about different grass species, so they always post those. And I think you can never have too much data when it comes to projects like this.
Yeah, and you also never know too what species are going to become listed too. Like we've certainly found this on a lot of our properties too. Like Eastern wood peewee, at one point it wasn't a species at risk. It wasn't a species at risk since I've been with NCC. And then suddenly it becomes one. And now we have all this data, which you guys thought was just a common species, but now is suddenly very important for us to know that it's on our property and where.
And I'm guessing that using the app and taking all these different pictures will just get you more comfortable with it and using it and how it works.
And it'll put you higher up on the leaderboard.
Any other questions for Ali or Megan?
I have a question about the picture observations on Milburn Creek, and there was a river otter identified. And was that verified?
We can check. So also sometimes too, I think in the cases of some of the pictures that it shows, sometimes it will just pull a picture that someone else has taken of a river otter, but.
Because I've spent a lot of time on that property and I've never seen a river otter. This is
I thought, it's funny you say that because I was looking at this yesterday and thought the exact same thing.
Well, it's not really the kind of location that a river otter would like to live in. Yeah, anyway, so how do you tell from that picture that is RG the person who took the picture? Is that what that means?
RG means, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ali, you can take this one.
Yeah, RG means research grade, so that it has been verified that that's what it.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Should contact Kathy and Bill.
Yeah,
Early.
exactly. Yeah.
Because I've seen river otters outside my house here, so maybe they ventured down the end of Milburn down and then up the Milburn Creek there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's very possible that because Milburn Creek is actually connected to Dog Lake and Cranberry Lake, it's very possible that they venture up to feed up on that property, but they're not, they don't like live there specifically.
Excellent.
Boy, that would be really fun to see.
No kidding, eh?
Mm-hmm. This is exciting.
That's great.
Any other questions?
Yes, I would like, this is a Nature Conservancy of Canada question. I would like to know whether there are any projects, any properties being targeted on Dog Lake. We have asked that question before of Gary Bell and he waffled. I like Gary, why he waffled, but I would like to know whether there is any possibility that's some of the few large pieces of land that are available, that are on Dog Lake, might be acquired at some point.
So I can tell you that currently I don't know of anything in my subregion that is up for works in Dog Lake. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to meet our new program director, Rob McRae. He shared with me some of the securement priorities that we're looking at currently. But a big thing too is that sometimes, even though we have our arms out in the community in different places, sometimes there's opportunities that we don't get to hear about. So if you know about specific opportunities that you think may be a good fit for the Nature Conservancy of Canada, please send them to us. I'm trying not to waffle, but I don't really have a specific answer for you in this case.
That NCC was interested in Crane's Nest, which is part of Dog Lake. I mean, it's essentially the same water, the way Cranberry is as well. Much less developed, and there's a whole part of it that doesn't have houses on it or a road going into it, and I just wondered whether there was any movement on that. Nothing that you've heard of, I gather.
Not that I've heard of, but I luckily have the job of getting to play outside and not the having to buy things.
That is certainly something that we could pass on to Rob, though, for sure.
Yeah, I would like that, because, you know, I've been here a long time on the lake, and it's changing dramatically, and not for the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In terms of acquisition and development. I mean, that's true of everywhere in the South, but nonetheless, it would be nice if some of the large properties could be acquired before it's too late.
That's a really good point, Morley. And how would we, as an association, the Dog and Cranberry Lakes Association, is there any role that we could play in advocating for that, supporting it, making noise about it? What would you suggest that we do?
I'll let you go first, Megan.
Sure, yeah. So, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And what we're really trying to do is connect more with our local communities, both through doing things like this. To put this back on iNaturalist a little bit, a lot of times we have only so much money and a lot of land that we'd like to acquire. So sometimes it really comes down to we have to pick what we think is the best and what the best use of our funds are at that time to have the biggest impact. So being able to pull from things like what species we know are on those properties is really important. Obviously, please do not go onto a property that you don't have permission to be on. But knowing if there are certain species in the area, knowing what you see, the more you know about what's going on that property, gives us the most information that we can use to make those tools. And then, of course, when we get to the stage where we know that we're in contention to purchase a property and we're trying to fundraise for things like that, the more community support we can get in terms of spreading the word and helping us to fundraise is fantastic. And then also letting us know if you know of things that come up for sale. We try and keep an eye out as best we can, but we can't always catch everything. So I'd say those are probably the biggest things that I could think of in terms of helping us out.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I just to add to that too, you know, like there are various ways that we protect land, and we do purchase, but we also are a charity, so we can accept the donation of land as well. And you can get a tax receipt through that as well. And so also as a lake association and knowing that we work in your backyard is also helping to spread the word that we're here, we're working in this landscape, we know how ecologically significant this area is. And that like we use GIS analysis to identify down to a parcel level what priorities are for us. But it's also super helpful to know from a local level, like from you, what you think is a priority as well, because you know, you guys are partners too, and you guys can help us kind of identify these areas as well. So we definitely welcome that feedback for sure.
Okay.
Well, then check out the north shore of Crane's Nest Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gary spoke about it 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I can also confirm that while we were talking, I took a look in iNaturalist, and there are 2 separate observations for river otters. And if you look at the pictures, that is what they are, and you can see whereabouts on the property they were found. So a great example of something that we might not necessarily have thought was there, but now we have proof and now we know.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And Megan, how can we see where they were on the property? Where do I see that?
Yeah, so basically if you go to the iNaturalist website or you're on the app, you can search by the different areas. So you search and you find Millburn Creek,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can see all of the different observations that have been made at Millburn Creek, and you can search that by species. So you can look at all the different species that have been found, and then when you click on that and kind of scroll down, there'll be a picture of the map, and you can look at the map with either a satellite view, if you prefer, to kind of help get your bearings, and you can click through it that way. So you can look through by species, you can see how many observations of that certain species, and then you can see who made it.
Oh, that's terrific. Does anybody else have any other questions?